Myers has been here probably the last 2 or 3 years. Once a year she comes in and talks to us about different topics. Usually I leave that up to Darlene, whatever she wants to talk about. She is the president of Strategic Human Initiatives. She's a human resource and management training expert with her own company right now, as I mentioned, Strategic Human Initiatives. And about 2 months ago, we talked about getting her on the schedule and leaving it up to her what she wanted to talk about, and she has firsthand experience about what she's going to talk about today. This just isn't a presentation that she researched and developed and is presenting today. She has firsthand experience about exactly what she's teaching you, and she knows exactly what she's talking about. Overcoming adversity, becoming resilient, and preparing for a better day. So thank you, Darlene, for coming in and helping us today.
Start with the story. In the 1930s, twin boys were born to a couple. And very happy family. Everything was going well for a couple of years until suddenly tragic hit the family. The mother died of cancer, and the father became despondent and fell into alcoholism. Boys were raised by their father, if you could call it being raised, and ultimately they had a very difficult childhood with a lot of frustration and disappointments and the general things that come along with being raised in a dysfunctional family. And after they became adults, the boys did stay in touch. They were not close as brothers, but they were in touch. And a psychologist happened to meet one of the brothers when he was in a homeless shelter, and he was an alcoholic. And the psychologist started to ask him some questions, and he said, "How did you find yourself here?" And the young man said, "Well, you know, this is the situation I was born into, and things were good when I was a child up until when my mother died and my father became an alcoholic. And really, what else could I become? Because, you know, that's all I saw, and it was such a terrible time as a child." The psychologist said, "Well, what happened to your twin brother?" And he said, "Well, he lives over, you know, he's about 15 miles away." The psychologist said, "Would you mind if I contacted him?" He said, "No, you can contact him." And the young man gave him his brother's contact information. He contacted the brother, and the brother was happy to talk to him, brought him into his house. And when he drove up to the house, it was pretty obvious that this young man had made some significantly different choices. It looked like he was pretty successful. He went in and was introduced to the young man. He had a nice family. He was a surgeon in the area. And the psychologist said, "Well, tell me, how did you come here? How did this happen with you?" And the young man said, "Well, you know, I was born into a pretty nice family, but then my mother died, and things got pretty bad. And I made up my mind that I was going to go live like that again." So I want you to think about how things can change based on the different decisions that we make. Because you have two people there. Really, they had the same circumstances. They were born into a family that, you know, didn't really have problems to begin with, but then suddenly there were problems. They made different choices, and it led to two very different results. And that's what I want you to see, that in all of our lives, we experience adversity. And it all depends on how we handle it. Not so much that we've had adversity. We're all going to have adversity. It's a part of life. It comes to each of us So it's not so much about the adversity as it is about how we're dealing with that adversity. And that's what's going to make the difference. So how are you handling it? Hopefully you're not sticking your head in the sand. And I'll tell you what, one thing I know is that the fact that you're here, you're not sticking your head in the sand. There's a lot of things I wanted to cover, and I don't have a lot of time today, but whenever I'm doing programs like this, I get the program ready, and then I keep looking, for other things that I can bring to you, because I know I recently went through this myself. It's been 3 years ago now, but my husband went through it as well, and he had a little bit more of an issue with it than I did. Everybody handles adversity differently, and the issues of being laid off and whatever, but we all have our way of dealing with it, and so I do understand that it affects different people in different ways. So it's important that you try to be as positive as you can, and as I was doing some research and I kept looking for different things I might be able to bring to you, there's going to be some things that I went ahead and printed some extra notes so that I can maybe introduce it into this program, because I want to make sure that you get everything you could possibly get today. You're going to hear me also talking about networking as being one of the most important things that you can do. And it's because I really believe it, and any one of us that are in HR, there's several of us in here in HR, I think any one of us would tell you that we would far and above love to have an applicant that has someone that referred them to us or can give us a reference on them beyond looking at a resume that came through. So the more you meet people and get to know people and expand your network, stay in touch with them. And we'll talk a little bit more about how to do that a little bit later. So one of the things I want you to pay attention to as your journey, we're going to talk about adversity and some of the outcomes that you can come across because of the adversity in your life. One of the things to pay attention to is, what can I learn from this experience? We all have a different road to follow in life. What can you learn from the adversity that you're going through right now? And everybody learns something different, because your experience with all of these things, all of the issues that come up in your life, is unique to you. One of the things I would suggest is evaluate what brought you here. It may have been a total surprise to you, because sometimes that does happen. There's other times where you are not as surprised. You kind of expected it to be coming, but you may have become kind of complacent in your position, and you weren't maybe looking at, well, what can I do in the event that I actually do get to a point where I'm out there looking? Have I looked at all the options that I need to be aware of so that I'm going to be ready to be out in the workforce? And when I say that, I'm talking about if you need more experience, if there's any additional education you might be needing, any certifications that you might need. All of those things can help to improve your employability and your ability to be retained by a company. One of the things I found while I was out there looking around for additional things that I could bring to you was principles regarding resilience. And as you can see in the flower, I don't know if this ever frustrates you, but I can't grow a plant to save my life. But in the back on our patio, I can grow them between bricks, like no problem. It's not where I want them, but that's where they grow, wherever they have the most diversity. One of the things that was listed in one of the areas that I was looking at was connecting with your purpose and meaning. And I know a lot of you brought up your passion and where the things that really get you fired up about what you're doing as work on a daily basis. And it really does help you to be more resilient when what you're doing is right in your soul. You know, it's something that you feel so strongly about that nothing can dissuade you. That's so important. So make that a part of it. Be true to yourself and go to the area that really feels right to you. The other thing is focus on your strengths. We all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. And for some reason, I don't know what it is, you've experienced it, I know I have, where you can have 10 things going right and there's one thing that goes wrong, and what is the one thing that you focus on? And for example, some of you have children. If the child brings home a report card and he or she has 4 A's and a C, what is the one thing you're going to talk to that kid about? Right? Instead of focusing on the things that they did so well, because they did 4 of them, they aced them. And those are the things that we really need to focus on. By the way, something you might want to write down, you've got pens and papers. If you want to go and find out your strengths based on some kind of a, like a regular assessment program, there's a website called www.VIA, that's Victor IA, survey, SURVEY.org. You can go there and you can take a free strength survey. There's also Strengths Finder 2.0, you have to buy the book and then you only get one chance to do it. It's much more expensive, but this is a way to do it. You can do it free. And it might just add a little measure of clarity to your personal development. You want to maintain perspective in what you're doing as you're working towards becoming more resilient and overcoming adversity. There's a whole laundry list of things. One of the things that I wanted to mention is being positive and having a positive outlook. Roy mentioned that when he was talking to you all before you did your 30-second. Keep it positive. And that is so important. I can't even tell you how important it is to be always looking forward. Talk about the things that went right. Learn from the things that went wrong. We have to do that. Things are going to go wrong. We're going to have adversity. But we need to learn from them and don't dwell on them. Continue going forward. So I had heard recently that rose-tinted glasses as opposed to rose-colored glasses might be where you want to go, because it still puts a positive light on things, but it'll let you see what's wrong so you can prepare for it and handle it before it becomes a real big problem. This I found, interestingly enough, is focused on organizations as a business. And I still thought it was pretty good, because as I looked at it, and you may have already all heard of the book, You Inc., treating yourself like a business. And really, when you think about it, it's true. Because we are looking to bring income into our little family business. There are, our area where we live. That's how we support ourselves. So we need income just like a company. We also need to be innovative. We have to be able to rebound from setbacks. And companies have that all the time. They have to reorganize. They have to reinvent themselves. And we have to too. There's times when we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to maintain a high level of productivity when we're in our houses, when we're at work. We need to have a high level of productivity, and companies need to maintain that. If they don't, that's when they start reducing workforce and making people leave because their income is down and their activity levels aren't where they should be. And I want you to notice nurture strong relationships, because I was kind of surprised to see that in the organizational setup. But again, I cannot tell you how important it is when you have connections with people. Make sure that you're strengthening them. Get in touch with people. Whether you're sending a quick email, and sometimes I know sometimes it's a little easier for women than it is for men. But men, please do that, because you all have your networks of people that you know. And even though that may not be your forte. It may not be something you know, I think sometimes it's a little bit of a different situation for men because you don't want to come across as like being too touchy-feely. But it doesn't really come across that way. Think about the times when somebody has reached out to you and how much you appreciated them taking a time to say, hey, that was a great job. You really enjoyed talking with you, or whatever it was that you did, and they gave you that feedback. Think about how it felt for you, because that's the way other people feel as well. So here are some tips, but before I give you my tips, even though I've had adversity, you all have had adversity too, and this isn't your first time having adversity because none of you are 5 years old. That's about the only person that they've been raised in, you know, one of those beautiful families that never has a hiccup. You know, they're about the only ones that didn't have an adversity. But you all have had adversity, and you've gone through it before. So is anybody here comfortable with maybe sharing just for a brief moment something that you overcome and how you overcame it? Anybody comfortable with that? No? Yes?
Yeah, I don't know if you want me to stand up?
Sure.
Yes, good morning, my name is Ed Scheinfeld, and having gone through, not the current situation, but previously in my work life, I worked for the federal government for a number of years, and I thought I was doing a very fine job in the job that I was in, but upper level management changed around, and so they thought that, well, they didn't like me in the particular job that I was in, so they shunted me over to another job. And the thing that I had to learn was, hey, it isn't necessarily about me, and maybe that's a little bit different than the U Inc. thing. I had to learn not to take it personally, but kind of approach it as, this is a new opportunity for me to deal with some new people, dealing in an area that, even though, yes, I knew about it, it was different than what I had been doing before, and what can I then do working in this new environment to position me to prove I can do a good job here, possibly then leading to another position, which it did. So, you got to learn and then move forward.
Great. That's
Not
an
always wait.
excellent point. Excellent point. Anybody else? Yes.
Once again, my name is Frank LaPrette, and I have two daughters at home. Well, actually, one's at home and one's married. They're 31 and 33. And when they were 4 and 6, I was awarded custody of them, and I've raised them ever since. What's the first thing you have to do when you're faced with two children? You got to find daycare or some kind of nursing school during the day. And I was able to find daycare that I liked, because you have to investigate it today, but it would have took every penny that I made just to pay for the daycare. There would have been nothing left over. There would have been no movies, there would have been no anything. So what I did was, I took a chance. First time in my life that I really ever took a chance, and I floated a loan for $140,000, and I bought the daycare. And basically what happened is my kids went to daycare for free. Then I hired Captain Michael Klein. He's a captain in the sheriff's department. I hired his wife, her name is Bonnie Klein, to run it for me, because we all know that daycare and nursery schools are a predominantly female-oriented business, not necessarily a male-oriented business. So I hired Captain Michael Klein's wife, and I had cops at my nursery school every day pushing kids on swings, and the school became a phenomenal success. I mean, what single mom, worse, married couple wouldn't want to take their child to a nursery school that didn't have a cop on it? So that's my success story, I guess. We're overcoming adversity.
That's amazing.
Can I ask you a question? Did you continue to charge the same rate that they were going to charge you?
I'll be honest with you, not to get into a long story about it. when I say I bought the daycare, I liked the style of that daycare,
Sure.
and I built one from the ground up, based on the style of that
So you thought it was a fair value, it's just that you couldn't afford it?
Well, at the time, it would have
Yeah,
been
sure.
$65, $130 a week for me
Sure.
out of pocket. And after I paid $130 for daycare, there'd be nothing left,
I
so.
understand. Thank
But-
you.
But right now, one of my daughters is paying $200 a week for a 2-year-old. Go figure.
That's impressive. There's a real great example of taking the bull by the horns. You know, I've got to put my children in daycare, let me just buy it and handle it. Great job.
But it was
Anybody
a
else?
chance, though. I mean, I had to
Sure.
float alone,
Yeah,
so my heart was going pitter-patter
I
for
bet.
many
I'll
years.
bet. And sometimes that's what we have to do. Sometimes we do have to take those risks. Getting out of the jaws of adversity sometimes is not, many times is not very comfortable. So I applaud you for that. That's really something. Anybody else want to share something quickly?
Sure. I lost my father at a very young age, and I was 13 at the time. And it was an interesting time for me because I didn't know what to expect in life. But I made a decision probably after a year of surviving that terrible thing, that the thing for me was my mother wasn't going to have to take care of me. So I was learning how to become self-sufficient, so that she didn't have to worry or be concerned with me. But I will share with you that I wasn't the best child for her. It was quite a challenge. But from that time forward, it made me understand how important it is to understand yourself. I spent a lot of time looking at everybody that was around me and seeing the weaknesses and the difficulties that they were as people, but I realized and recognized they were all within me as well. So I found ways internally just to overcome those types of things, and also understand that because these folks are this way, they're not any different than me. They are me. They are part of me. And it helped me understand more about myself and helped me develop self-confidence and the ability to deal with anyone, basically at any level in a business organization or any status of life. So it was a huge challenge for me to find that out. When I was 18, it was kind of an epiphany for me, because I realized at that time, oh my gosh, I can go to jail and I'm on my own. But I was very quiet and had a very small circle of friends. I wore the same outfit every day to school, blue jeans, army boots, and a t-shirt. Really long hair back in the 70s. And I did that purposely to show other people who had stereotypes that you could still be a decent human being, even though you might look at someone and say, look at that useless, long-haired person. But it just taught me a lot about myself and how to become self-sufficient. Anybody can do it. I'm not a brainiac. Anybody can do these types of things.
That's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. All three of you, thank you. Do you see one of the common threads there, though, is one thing, somebody had to take a risk. Actually, everybody had to take a risk. When you were deciding to look at things from a different viewpoint and say, okay, they don't necessarily like the way I'm doing this, how can I turn this into an opportunity? In your situation with your father, initially, tough time, how do I get through this? But it turns out I'm learning from the situation that I've been put into. So good things can come, and often do come, from adversity. As a matter of fact, I'm sure all of you can give me an example of someone that you know that has children, they've given them the world, and unfortunately, by doing that, the child never learned how to fend for themselves. And it really has set them back as opposed to helping them. Kind of like the butterfly story, you know, when they're trying to get out of their cocoon and all that. That actually happened not with the butterfly, but when I was a little kid, we had an egg. I don't know how we knew it was fertilized, but somehow or another they knew it was fertilized, and we rigged up a little incubator. So, and I've always been an animal lover. But so we're watching this egg every day, right? Turning it, keeping it on a little soft area, a little light bulb in there to keep it warm so that it's going to grow. And pretty soon we heard the little peeping inside, so you could hear the little like noise that it was making. And sure enough, one day it started to crack the egg. The egg started cracking, you know, it's like picking its way out. But it looked like the poor thing couldn't get out. So what do you think we did? We don't know. And I mean, you know, it probably lived 2 or 3 hours and it died, which is, you know, and then my mom told me, she said, you know, there's a reason why they have to pick their way out of the egg and all that the whole thing. But you see how that goes. The whole adversity thing really does help us to grow and get through things that we might not think we can get through. I love this saying, change is inevitable, progress is a choice. I thought that was kind of nice. So, a few things to pay attention to while you're going through change. Getting positive input. This is a great way to get some positive input. Coming together with a group of people like this. Meeting with friends that you have that are positive. This is a great time to stay away from people that are always negative. You just really want to stay away from people like that. Because you know what happens is that it kind of brings that out in you. You start to commiserate. And then, I don't know if you've ever realized what happens when you start to do that. That's all you start to see. Is like all the bad stuff going around you. You don't want to do that. So really stay away from those kind of folks at this time. Really anytime, but especially now. Collaborate with other people. And I heard Carol Ann mention that when you were doing your 30-second commercials. It's really true that all of you can be a resource for each other because you all know people in the industries or maybe in some of the industries out here that all the others of you are looking for positions in. And it's your opportunity to, if you've got contacts in a certain area, let some of these folks know. And how you would do that is start getting together. Form groups outside of this. You may want to start one on a Monday morning, kick off the week. Now we're going to meet for coffee at Starbucks. What's your plan for the week? What have you got lined up in terms of how many resumes are you going to send out and how many things we're going to do on LinkedIn? One of the things I'm going to make available to Roy, I have printed up about 20 of these, but it's a weekly scorecard, and it's something that you can use to keep track of your activities that are relating to job search. And so, you know, anybody that wants these can have them, but Roy will get the electronic version of it, and it's something that you can make yourself. I mean, it's very simple, but it just gives you something to check off and keep track of what you're doing. It kind of helps you to be accountable to yourself, right? We all need to be accountable for what we're doing. So collaborate. Really get together with each other. Form groups. We do that in business. Networking. I told you I was going to hammer this into your head tonight. I can't even tell you how important it is to get out. Make sure that at least once or twice a week you're getting out and networking in some way, shape, or form. And we'll talk about a couple different ways of doing that. The interaction with people is actually very good for you on a mental level. I mean, you know, your perspective of things is much more clear when you're around people and you've got positive input. You've got people giving you ideas that you wouldn't think yourself. You wouldn't think them up yourself. Okay? And then I want to encourage you to read. You may want to read different types of publications, but read some things that you know are relating to your particular industry. You know, if you're a CPA, read things that have to do with accounting and trends in that area. If you're in HR, get involved with SHRM, that's the Society for Human Resource Management. There are local associations in the area for all kinds of different programs. I know we have one for HR, but there's also an accounting organization. Isn't there like a accountants?
There's several.
Yeah.
There's CPA, there's several.
Yeah, so there's those types of organizations. I wanted to mention there's American Society for Training and Development, for those of you that are trainers or into education, that may be a good area for you to check out. Go to www.astdsuncoast.org, and I know they have a local chapter in the area, great people, and that's a place you can go to do some networking, get additional information and trends that are going on in the industry. Management organizations, project management organizations, marketing. There's all kinds of different organizations out there for you to get involved with so that you're getting around the people that are in the industries that they know who's hiring, right? You've got neighbors that you can get in touch with. But reading, whether it's in your area, whether it's personal development type of things, because all those things kind of help keep you positive and keep you on the right track. And you never know what it's gonna bring up, what kind of creative bell it'll ring, and suddenly you're going to think of something that you could do that you hadn't thought of before, right? Stories about people. That was one of the things that I had found when I was doing additional research, like people that have overcome adversity. Sometimes that can be really really inspiring when sometimes you need inspiration, right? Helen Keller, I mean, did that woman have adversity or what? Right? I mean, how in the world she ever got to where she was is amazing. And that was, if anybody had an excuse not to do something, it would have been her, right? And then we all know about her because she made such an amazing impact on everyone. Winston Churchill apparently had a big stuttering problem. Unfortunately, they listed Lance Armstrong, and he still overcame some serious adversity. You can't deny that. But J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter was. That woman was apparently raising her son or child on her own, and tried multiple times to get the book published. Finally, somebody did. Imagine what those other publishers must be thinking. Oh, I can't believe we messed that up.
They're recovering their own adversity now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So,
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, correct?
Yeah, he was kicked out of the company.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. So there's adversity everywhere. Everyone has had to go through it at some point. Some people just manage it better than others, and so we want to be on the side of the ones that are managing it better. There's something called, which I had not heard of, and I'll tell you about a book that I found out that they had actually done research on post-traumatic growth. You've all heard of post-traumatic stress syndrome and disorder. But I was interested in this post-traumatic growth because it does happen quite frequently in people that go through tough times. And when I was looking that up, I kind of went into the PSTD, and I found this picture of this young man kissing this dog's head. And I don't know, when you look at that, doesn't that just kind of give you a feeling of like calm? Like a feeling, isn't it just kind of a really nice feeling? And I put it in there because animals really can kind of take the stress out of your life. So if you have animals, be with them because they really can help you feel better about things because they're so unconditional in their love for us. So anyway, that was a freebie for you. Okay, so anyway, this is a book that I recently got. I listen to books in the car, as well as just other types of positive mental attitude kind of things, because I just kind of feel like I need it. But this guy really has done some research on happiness and success, and what order they come. Are you familiar with them, Roy?
Yeah, I've read that book.
Okay, awesome book. Very interesting. I would recommend it if you get a chance. I get no kudos from this guy. This guy doesn't know me from anybody, but I would highly recommend it because his premise in this book is that happiness comes before success does. And he's got all kinds of research to substantiate that. And anyway, it's a very interesting book. One of the things that he brings up in it is, you know, and I know I'm not the only one that's done this, you go, I am going to be so happy when I get this job. That is when things are going to really go well for me. I cannot wait. I can't wait. I'm going to be so happy when I finally move into that house. I'm going to be so happy when I finally sell this house. I'm going to be so happy when my ship comes in, or when I meet the guy, or I meet the girl, or when I get married, or whatever it is, right? We always say that. I'm going to be so happy when. Well, he's saying in this book, no, you're not happy now, you're not going to be happy then. So that I would really recommend this. If you're not a reader, get it on CD. But it's a worthwhile book to listen to. Okay, so there's 3 things that I'm going to ask you to do. These things, I've actually just started. The first one is one that I just got out of that book, The Happiness Advantage. And I've been telling my husband because, you know, he's an engineer, and he's pretty stoic. He doesn't really let his emotions out. So things can be going really good, but you never know it because he doesn't really let it go. So I told him, okay, now I'm doing an experiment test. Every single day before we go to bed, we have to list 3 things that are good. You will not believe how hard it can be. And we live in America. It's like we're living the mecca of good stuff, right? And we can't think of 3 things at the end of the day. We do. We do. And actually, what it does for you when you start doing things like that is during the day you're thinking, I got to come up with 3 things at the end of the day. So you're looking at all the things that are going on during the day thinking, will this go on my list? But what are you doing when you're doing that? You're starting to pay attention to the good stuff that's going on as opposed to